You know why I really love Nick Hood as a minister? I watched his father do it, and he took over for the church, and he was one of us, but he really turned out to be a great minister. I know it's hard, and that's something that I know that all ministers may not be doing what they're doing because for the right reasons, but I know it's hard. I know he's a beautiful man, and we've been knowing each other for over 50 years. I believe in him. He's inspired me in so many ways to do what I'm doing and try to be the best at it. Make sure you watch Nick Hood's Ministries. You'll never be the same.
Welcome to Nicholas Hood III Ministries, a ministry of hope, spiritual inspiration, personal power guided by Christian love. May the power of God's Holy Spirit fall upon you as you sit back and enjoy today's program. I introduce you now to Pastor Nicholas Hood III.
Today I want to talk about Elijah and the ravens. Elijah and the ravens, ravens as in birds. I'm in the midst of a series of sermons on Elijah at my church, and I thought I'd bring one here. This one is about a time in the life of Elijah when he makes Jezebel, the queen, and her husband Ahab angry. This is from 1 Kings 17. And in the beginning of 1 Kings 17, we're told that Jezebel and Ahab, the king and queen, or queen and king of Israel, are angry with Elijah. And why are they angry? They're angry because Elijah has challenged them. He's challenged them to bring Israel back to the traditional worship of Yahweh, Elohim, the God that we worship to this day. And they didn't like it. And the reason why they didn't like it was they were promoting the religion of the day, which was a Canaanite religion. And there were several of them, but two of them in particular stood out. One is the religion of Baal, B-A-A-L. And in the worship of Baal, it was an agrarian society, a society of farmers. Farmers who made their living, just like farmers today, off the produce of the land. And what these foreign gods would do, or what they promoted, was that in these fertility rites to pray that God would make the land fertile so that there'd be more corn, more beans, more produce. They had a whole system of temple worship which engaged and involved temple prostitutes. And with a temple prostitute, basically the farmer, maybe his family, comes into the temple, they pay a little fee, maybe a big fee, and then for their fee, you get time with the temple prostitute. And with the time with the temple prostitute, it would enable them to figuratively act out the fertilization of the land. You had another god of that day called Molech. And with Molech, one of the features that was particularly offensive to Elijah and the prophets of the day, the prophets of Israel, was that there was a whole tradition of burning your firstborn son. And in the book of 1 Kings, you'll see some examples where Elijah challenges the people about burning not just your firstborn, but your youngest child. And can you imagine that? You know, imagine that a woman has gone through 9 months of pregnancy, delivered a baby with all the challenges of delivering a child, only to have the husband say, well, now's the time to give our child back to Molech, and so we're going to burn the child up. And so it was a wild time, and Elijah challenges these rituals. And because he challenges the rituals, Ahab and Jezebel swear to kill him. And so in 1 Kings 17, what happens is Elijah is on the run, and he's running from Jezebel. Have you ever heard people say, "You Jezebel, you"? That's where it comes from, 1 Kings. And it was a real person. And Jezebel was pretty tough. And so Elijah is running away from Jezebel in particular, but also her husband Ahab. And God talks to Elijah. God tells him, go to a place called Sharif. And at Sharif, you'll find a wadi, a W-A-D-I, wadi, that's like a freshwater pool. He said, go to the wadi at Sharif, and I will feed you by ravens. I've commanded ravens, not one, but more than one, multiple birds, to bring you bread and meat every morning and bread and meat every evening. And Elijah goes there, and he's there for some time until the water dries up. But what I want to challenge you to think about today is this whole concept of God sending birds to feed Elijah. And one of the amazing things about God feeding Elijah through these birds, the ravens, is that the ravens are birds of prey. And it's specifically outlined in the book of Leviticus and the book of Deuteronomy that you are not to give an offering to God from a birds of prey. Now there are other animals that were forbidden, but it was far better to give an offering with a pigeon, a little bitty pigeon, than a big black bird, the big raven, because the raven was considered a bird of prey. And so it's kind of interesting to me. That's probably a sermon on its own accord. What does it mean when God breaks the godly rules? If the godly rule says, you shall not make an offering with a bird of prey, but then God tells Elijah, I have commanded this particular bird of prey to feed you. You did not seek the bird of prey, but I have sought you, and you are valuable to me. And because you are valuable to me, I'm going to change the rules for you. And by the way, these birds are going to nourish you. They're going to bring you not just bread, but they're going to bring you meat. And what kind of meat? Probably a little chicken, maybe some roadkill, maybe some small little animal. But the birds, these birds of prey would pick them up, flap their wings, and fly all the way to Sharif to feed Elijah. And so what is the point that I'm making in this? To me, one of the points is that you and I need to be like Elijah. We need to be flexible enough to realize that God has a blessing for you. And the blessing that God has in store for you and even me is a blessing that we may not be able to see. You may not know where your real blessing is coming from. And when you get down to your last dime, when your back is really up against the wall, you don't know how God is going to respond to you. And you and I need to be open. We need to be flexible. We need to be fluid enough to realize that God is looking at you all the time. God is looking at me all the time. And God has already determined before you, and even I can figure it out, that you are worth living. You are worth sustaining. You are worth feeding. You are worth being employed. And because of this, God will send something like a raven. And it may be in the form of a tangible blessing, like money. It may come in the form of food, but it also may come in the form of advice. Sometimes a little bit of advice, good advice, is better than a little bit of money. Because a little bit of money can only go so far. But if somebody gives you a clue as to how you can make more money, how you can live a better life, how you can be a better parent, how you can be a better husband, a better wife, a better grandmother, a better child, then your life is appreciably made better. And so the word that I want to leave you with today is look for the unexpected. Expect the unexpected. Expect that God is going to feed you just like God fed Elijah. And when your blessing comes down from heaven, it may not come in the form that you ever imagined it might come, but it will come. And when it comes, I want you to think about what Nick Hood said this day. I want you to smile, and I want you to give God the glory, because God is worthy to be praised, and God is blessing you right now. It may not look like a blessing, it may not feel like a blessing, but I'm here to tell you that God already has a blessing with your name on it. God bless you, God keep you. I want you to stick around for a moment. I have a young preacher from Detroit who's going to be with me in the second half of this show, and we're going to talk a little bit more about these unexpected blessings that God has in store for you and me. Stick around. Thanks so much for tuning in.
This is a new ministry which is just starting. Reverend Hood needs your help in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and His power throughout the world. If you would be so kind as to send a donation to Nicholas Hood III Ministries of any amount, Reverend Hood will send you a free complimentary copy of his book of original personal prayers and beautiful photographs entitled The Test, The Strength, The Endurance, and The Way Out.
Thank you for sticking around for this episode. I'm talking about Elijah and the ravens, being fed by the ravens. And today I have a biblical scholar himself, the pastor of the historic Second Baptist Church in Detroit, Michigan, the Reverend Lawrence Rogers. And I've asked him to join me today to get his perspective. So Reverend, thanks so much for joining me on the show.
Yes.
And what are your thoughts about Elijah being fed by the ravens and these unexpected blessings?
Yes, I appreciate you, Pastor Hood, for inviting me onto your platform. And I appreciate you because you are a man of great wisdom and integrity and biblical knowledge. So it means a lot to me to be in this space with you.
Oh, look, the honor is mine.
Yes, sir.
So tell us, what are your first thoughts about Elijah being fed by the ravens?
I think that's something that we can learn about Elijah being fed by the ravens, is that God will provide for us if we trust in the Lord. And I feel that we're living in a time where there's a great deal of uncertainty. And oftentimes when we have this uncertainty and people are not able to clearly connect the dots regarding what is the trajectory of their life, that's when we sometimes take matters into our own hands. Now, I would like to explain that when I bring up taking matters into our own hands, I'm not talking about self-determination. I believe in self-determination. But more so what I mean is that when we start to bend the lines of God's ethics, we start to bend and twist God's word, or just ignore it in order to make things happen at the pace that we want to see it. And I think that what we can learn from, one of the things we can learn from the story of Elijah and the ravens, is that God will provide for us in ways that just are nonsensical, ways that don't make sense, that are unexpected, that are hard to understand, yet God still has the heads on our heads, or lack thereof, numbered.
Great point. Let me ask you this. I know you've given some thought and you've written a book that deals in part with discerning the will of God,
Yes.
the direction of God for our lives. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. My book is The Inward Revolution, and this is a book about the journey of radical transformation. And the very first chapter is about discernment. And when we talk about discernment, one thing that's important is being able to still our voice. Theologian Howard Thurman talks about being able to center down so that we can still ourselves, so that we can more clearly hear the voice of God. I think one of the problems that we have in this age is that, we know that in the Ten Commandments, one of the Ten Commandments is, thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. Some people think that's regarding using profanity in God's name, but truthfully what it's about is saying that God said something that God did not say. And that's taking the Lord's name in vain. So if I were to go out and say, Pastor Hood, if I go to McDonald's and say, Pastor Hood told me to tell you all to give me a bunch of free food, that's me taking your name in vain. So I believe that there are a lot of folks who have not done the work of discerning their own voice from God's voice. So for us to be able to tell the difference, we got to first learn our voice. A lot of people have not self-actualized, is what we call it. They haven't taken the time to learn their own distinct voice. But even worse, a lot of folks have not taken the time to learn God's voice.
Yeah.
And so a part of being able to discern is to be able to learn how to tell the difference between one's own voice and the voice of God. And that's one thing that I talk about in the very first chapter of my book, Inward Revolution, in the chapter regarding discernment.
Tell me a little more about the book. So what are some of the themes in other chapters?
Sure. Well, the overall point of the book is that in our lives, we face a lot of different stimulus. We face a lot of different stimuli, meaning there's a lot of things that happen to us in our day-to-day lives. I mean, every day we have things that happen. Somebody cuts us off in traffic, or maybe our boss yells at us, or maybe we get some unexpected bill that we were not expecting. Things happen to us. This is what I mean when I say stimulus. And the book is about being able to control our reaction to the different stimuli in life. So the different things that come my way, how can I have an inward revolution where I am in charge and I'm responding to things in a godly way? It's a book about the spiritual disciplines, but it's very pragmatic, it's very active. It's about being able to make sure that I'm in the driver's seat of my own behaviors and my own thoughts.
Mm-hmm. And if a person would like to purchase a copy of your book, can they get it on Amazon?
Absolutely. The book is available at Amazon.com. If you can just simply remember 2 words, Inward Revolution. If you search those words, you see the book come out written by me, Lawrence Rogers. And I believe it's a book that will be very transformative to the life of the reader. We have some wonderful endorsements for it. And the endorsers often wrote me letters saying how much the book helped to transform their life. And so I think it will be a gift to the church, a gift to every believer who takes the time to read it.
I commend you for having written a book. You're a lot younger than I am. You're in your early 40s, correct?
No, sir, I'm 39 actually.
39. Okay. And you've written your book. Is this your first book?
Yes, sir. This is my first book that I've written. I've been featured in other books, but this is the first book that I've written, all by myself. So.
That's tremendous.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm 72, and I didn't write my first book until I published it in 2015.
Okay.
And so it took me a while to get there, but you're ahead of the game.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So give me some more thoughts about Elijah. One of the things I did not mention in the little homily that I gave at the beginning is that the reason why he's running from Jezebel and Ahab, it's not just that he has offended them by challenging their religion in this temple prostitutes and the burning of children. But in effect, what Elijah is doing is he's challenging through truth to power. Mm-hmm. He's really challenging the power of the day with his truth,
Yes.
God's truth.
Yes.
And to me, that's kind of similar to what we're seeing today on college campuses all over America, where you have young people who are challenging the war in Palestine, and they're doing it on college campuses.
Yes.
To the chagrin of some of their parents. Mm-hmm. The United States government is, and the president, and I support the president, but they're, flustered. They can't figure out, why is it these young people are saying what we can't say? Mm-hmm. And some of those young people are suffering for that. Some, are being punished academically or punished, socially, but they've done this anyway. In a sense, that's kind of similar to what I lived through in the civil rights movement.
Exactly.
And I'm just interested to get your thoughts.
Well, I think that what we are finding is that there's a bit of a cycle, I believe, in America. And the cycle, I believe, it involves when a person's young, when they have less responsibilities, when they don't have as much debt, they're able to be a lot more idealistic and take more risk. I think that as we find people getting older, they take on more debt, people have children, they end up getting leases, mortgages, bills. They develop a world for themselves. They want to protect that world. They don't want to rock the boat. So you find people tend to, not everybody, but most people, as they get older, they assimilate more so into the status quo. And then younger people are the ones who are more idealistic and willing to take risk. You brought up civil rights movement. You go watch the footage from civil rights movement. I mean, these were young kids. These people in their there's teenagers, people in their early 20s who are out protesting, having dogs sicked on them, water hoses blasted on them. Think about even with the hippie and the peace movement. It's young people doing that, and the anti-war movement, you know, and all of that. It was young people doing that, and it was a similar dynamic. And so I think what ends up happening is that this cycle is created, and the young people on campuses, you know, they would not have to say anything if the generations older than them would voice their opinion on it. So they are filling a void on what they think is lacking in the public conversation. And I think it draws back to Elijah, because Elijah was not a fair weather believer, okay? And so Elijah was a person who, whether he was hungry, whether he was liked, whether he was favored by the people, whether the king and queen invited him to the gala or to the event, whether he was in a photo op or not, Elijah was going to say, "What thus saith the Lord," right? No matter what. It didn't matter if Elijah had a mortgage or a car note or student loan debt or a bunch of kids. He was still going to say, "Thus saith the Lord." And I think what people have got to find is their moral compass. So it's not a matter of the issue. It's just a matter of, am I willing to stand on what I believe despite what I think I have to lose? Because I believe that what God wants us to have is integrity and trust that God will take care of us. And that's really what the Raven story tells us, that Elijah, who was willing to risk it all for God, in his moment of intense vulnerability, God still had his back.
Reverend, this broadcast is still in the very early stages. We just passed the first 12 months in January.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Survived 12 months. But one of the really exciting things to me, even over just the last couple weeks, is I've gotten correspondence and even one contribution from an inmate in a state prison. And I've had a couple of inmates reach out to me. And that's very gratifying. But I'm just interested from your perspective, what encouragement about life do you see in the Elijah story for people like these inmates who are writing me? There are some people who are older who are writing. They're all over the country, really. And for the inmate and the senior citizen, what can they learn from Elijah?
Well, I guess I'll first speak to the inmate. And I want to say to a person that's an inmate that I want you to know that you should not be defined by the biggest mistake you made in your life. We've all made mistakes. And so I want you to see yourself as beyond the inmate, but see yourself as a child of God, because that's your eternal title if you believe on God and accept Jesus Christ into your heart. That's your title for eternity. You won't be known as an inmate by God or in the book of life. You'll be known as a child of God. But I also want to say that throughout the Bible, there are many people, Pastor Hood, who had experienced incarceration. Elijah was a fugitive.
Literally,
He was
he's
on
the run.
Elijah was a fugitive. John the Baptist was incarcerated. Peter was incarcerated. Paul was incarcerated. King David was a fugitive for a while. Moses spent time on the run as well. Jesus Christ was incarcerated. So, to a person who finds themselves incarcerated or in prison, I want you to know that the Bible is a book all about people who had been on the other side of the law, but yet God still saw them as redeemed. And so I want you to know that just because you're behind the wall doesn't mean that God's given up on you. And just because Elijah was a fugitive, God did not give up on him. He sent the ravens to help him. And I also think about the seniors you brought up too. I want to say to the seniors that the story of the ravens, what it tells our seniors is that, sometimes seniors have to make tough choices. Seniors are trying to live on a fixed income. Seniors have to figure out how to make ends meet while they have less income and more outgoing funds. But I want to say to the seniors that please continue to walk with God and also continue to be a part of your local church, because I believe that the church has an accountability to the seniors. James says in James 1 that pure religion is taking care of the orphans and the widows. Well, what that was really saying was children and seniors. And so I just want to say to seniors that I believe that just like Elijah was taken care of by God through something as random as ravens, that God can also take care of you in ways that are unexpected.
Pastor Rogers, that's a great statement. I'm sorry, but we're about out of time. So we're going to wrap this up. But for those of you who are watching this, Reverend Rogers is going to be with me for the next 2 weeks. And I hope that you'll tell a friend, that this is coming. We've got a young preacher who's joining Nick Hood on the line. And we're going to be talking the next 2 weeks about Elijah, different aspects in the life of Elijah. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And folks, thank you for watching. God bless, God keep you, and remember, I'm praying for you.
Thank you for watching today's program. We hope you've been blessed in a powerful way. Just knowing you took the time to watch today's broadcast is a great encouragement to Pastor Nick Hood. If this broadcast has been a blessing to you, we ask that you mail a tax-free donation to Nicholas Hood Ministries at 4535 Chrysler Drive, Detroit, Michigan, 48201.
And the point that I'm making is that in everybody's life, at some point, there's a plan B. God is talking to us every step of the way. God is trying to show you something every step of the way. When things seem to be going wrong, that's God's way of opening another door. I am convinced that God has been directing me every step of my life.
On the Word.